Welcome back to our latest episode of Success Way. And today I'm joined by Jenelle Friday, and she's the VP of Customer Success at Forecastable. And let me just pause here and let her introduce herself.
All right, thank you. So I'm Jenelle Friday. I'm currently the VP of Customer Success at Forecastable, like we've mentioned, and I've just come on board. We are a startup company, very excited at the forward motion we currently have. But my background originally was to sing opera in college, and then I moved into office management, executive assistant support, and then just happened into customer success about a decade ago. So I've been focused on customer success for the last 10 years and have just found myself uniquely in a place where despite businesses and the culture and the community or our economy just have really found myself in very amazing places with amazing leaders. So I'm very thrilled to be joining today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Janelle.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that you're currently and you started your journey as an opera singer, as you said. I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's interesting. So, what brought you to customer success? Was this just um, by chance, or was it a conscientious decision that you wanted to get into customer success? How did that happen?
Yeah, I really didn't know it was called customer success. So I was working closely as an executive assistant to a company owner and found myself interacting with some of our largest customers at the time and really managing that relationship. That was when I lived in Washington State. I moved to Colorado about 7 years ago to be a full time aunt to my now three nephews and found myself at an organization as an SDR. So entry level sales. I did pretty well there and they started a brand new customer success team. And so I was offered a promotion to be an account executive or a promotion to be the very first customer success manager. And I chose customer success because I don't like the thrill of the chase. I'm not a true salesman at heart. I don't like the unpredictability of the income. It just wasn't my cup of tea. And my core value in life is people. I love empowering others. I love connecting with others and building really amazing relationships with everyone that I encounter. And so that just kind of seemed like a really good path to take. And it was the right choice because since then, I've had incredible success. Connected with some of the most incredible people, and I just feel like I'm in the job of my I'm in the role or the community of my life, and this is my career path until I retire.
Excellent. So, were there any things you learned while you were doing SDR role that you found was carried over well into the CSM realm?
Yeah, absolutely. The conversations where someone tells you no and you don't just go, okay, have a nice day, thanks for your time. You press and you ask questions and you really get to understand what's driving the no so that you can better communicate, more quickly identify the reasons for pushback if they are real reasons or if they're just excuses. It really forces you to understand how to speak to a gated individual like an executive assistant or another salesperson and executive leadership. So I got really comfortable with having conversations with chief financial officers, chief operating officers, even CEOs, and feeling out the differences in those conversations between, a mid-level manager versus an ELT member. So lots of skills I acquired during my time as an SDR.
That's you make a good point because CSMs cannot be shy. As you said,
Correct.
they cannot just wither away at the first time they hear no or stuff like that. So take
Yeah,
rejection in some way is part of CSM life,
very
and
true.
and SDRs face that probably more than even CSMs do.
Yes, I would agree with you. Yes.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that too, totally. So, so moving gears, changing gears a little bit, we want to kind of you know lean on your experiences, in terms of how best to work across organizational boundaries, how to bust silos. What are those kinds of things that CSMs can do to
Yeah.
better communicate?
Yeah. So I have kind of four different elements that I thought I could talk about. The first one really is it's critical for an organization to have well-defined roles and responsibilities. And in a document that all teams receive during either their initial training or after this initiative has pushed through, so that sales roles and responsibilities are defined, CSMs are defined, maybe a technical support engineer or a support team member, professional services, who owns what and who's responsible for what. Because when those lines are blurred, it creates tension and it opens opportunities for team members to be like, well, you were responsible for that. Well, why did you have that conversation without me? I should have been on the call. And I've been through all of those moments. So in order to really make sure that you have cross collaboration and team members that understand how to work together, they all need to understand what is my role and what is my responsibility, and how do those two things blend with all of the other team members that touch a customer account. So that's kind of, you have to start there, because if you don't, the rest gets messy. Okay. So then the second thing is I'm focusing on building KPIs for a account executive and a CSM to achieve together. Because if that KPI is successfully achieved, they both get compensated on the back end. So it kind of forces that hand for those two working individuals to work together. And I'm already seeing this be a really positive thing between my sales department and my post-sales department, because really, truly, the customer is the mission. And that was a post I read this morning. Customer success is a mindset for the entire organization. And so when you continually push that message that it doesn't matter if you're pre-sales or post-sales, the customer voice should be the loudest in our organization. That's true for sales too. And we have to motivate sales through sometimes those KPIs, because that's what they are driven by. And so when you assign those KPIs to work collaboratively with a customer success manager or an account manager or whatever title it is that you're using, it's that forced hand of, okay, we have to work together. And hopefully it becomes a positive interaction that they enjoy working together because they understand their roles and responsibilities. So then for me, part of what I did to manage these relationships, especially while I was at Adobe, is there were weekly meetings where I would have all of my account executives, SDR, BDRs, technical account managers, maybe account managers come together, and we would do an account overview. And my account executives would do that as well. So we're bringing all of the players to the table to cover my accounts that I'm managing, so that everybody knows what each person is doing. What are the tasks that you're working on for said customer? How can I help support you? How can I help drive your results? What do you need from me? And making sure that we're all aligned on what needs to happen in the account and who's going to own which activity. We also talk about the calls that are scheduled, because I think a lot of the times a really proactive account executive who's great is going to have meetings on the calendar. And I think sometimes they forget to include customer success because they're afraid that person might say something wrong. They're afraid that they've built this amazing relationship with this person, and if they don't know the CSM very well, that person could, muddy the waters a little bit. I think the truth is that customer success managers need to be looked at as a positive value add team member instead of a deterrent from whatever action the account executive is trying to accomplish, because we are there to make sure that the customer's voice is heard, the company is represented, so we're two sides of the same coin. And really, truly, my mindset and my heart mentality is, how can I help you? Because if you close the deal, that's great for our company. So I want to help you succeed in that. How can I do that? And if it's already a signed customer, I should be the point person anyway. So if you're talking to the customer, whether that's a C-level, a mid-level manager, I should be included, because it shows the customer that we're aligned. It ensures that I know what's happening, so that if something is said in the conversation and I don't attend, what happens then is in my next conversation with the customer, they could say, oh, well, I talked about that with Mr. Account Executive. You don't know? And I'm going to go, no. And that shows the customer we're not aligned, and it creates confusion and doubt in the customer's mind. So being aligned and ensuring everybody understands what's happening is really critical towards that success. And then I will last say, I think it's also really critical, especially for organizations that this is a new mentality or they're really working to build cross collaboration, is you have to highlight the wins. And so, for me, once a month, we're going to highlight a customer situation or a closed one opportunity or upsell, cross sell, with highlighting the story of how did the cross collaboration in that account work. And we're going to highlight all of the team members who were involved. Why does it work really well? Because I want to tell the story that the more we collaborate and work together, the more we all win at the end of the day. And we need to embrace each other's positions and KPIs and what's everybody working towards to help everybody achieve and win all at the same time. And so by highlighting those wins to the entire organization, we're also pushing everyone in that same direction of the more we work together, the more we win together, and everybody's happy. So those are kind of the four key things that I'm thinking of. Like, if you're either starting a new or you're overhauling a department and you really want to, like you talk about, bust open those silos, these are really critical pieces that you have to have in order for that that drive to be successful.
Yeah, no, I completely hear you, especially when you talk about, highlighting the wins for the month or quarter or whatever the case might be.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I think the CSM spend so much time in escalations and those kind of things where the management attention gets overly focused, almost pinholed into that little piece of the equation when there's a much larger picture and you could be winning everywhere except for this little thing. And then the only thing that, execs want to know is like what happened here, even though there's so much else going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's important too to acknowledge you're not going to like the people you work with all the time. You're going to have individuals within those teams that you might ruffle feathers, or you just don't like somebody, right? That's the case for all of us. And I think it's really important as a CSM's approach to realize, okay, I don't have to like everybody, but I need to put on my adult hat. I'm being paid to do a job. We all are being paid to do a job. We are all adults. We all graduated high school, hopefully. And we need to act like adults. So even if I don't personally like what you stand for, I don't agree with your politics, I don't like whatever, I'm going to stay professional and courteous in all of my dealings because that's the right thing to do. And for me personally, that's been a challenge. I find a lot of you know, talking behind people's backs and going to a manager when they could have just come to me to have a conversation. And I think those actions indicate a level of professional immaturity that we need to challenge and encourage each other to do better with each other, because that's how real relationships are built. That's how trust is built. And we all need to have trust that our co-aligned team members are professionals and are going to do their jobs and they're going to do them well. And however I can help you to do your job well, that's what I want to do. But it takes a higher level of communication than I think a lot of us are used to.
No, I agree with everything you said. I mean, I've seen everything you said as well. But I don't, I mean, you make a point about everyone being an adult. I think people are adults and they sometimes feel they need to break the norms to get to their agenda. And some of the
Mm-hmm.
behaviors you mentioned, kind of, I think are driven from that, even though they know they probably shouldn't be doing it, but
Yeah.
they feel they can achieve their personal goals or agenda or whatever it is. And that kind of muddies the water completely. And at the end of the day, it's the customer that kind of pays the price because there's just finger
Mm-hmm.
pointing going on internally and nothing
Yeah.
productive is getting done.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And I mean, to that point, I think it's also really critical that you have alignment at your mid-level managers as well, right? Because the ELT team can send down this, this idea or this agenda of here's what we're going to work on, and we need to be inclusive and we need to cross collaborate and we need to value everybody. But that mid-level manager who doesn't like maybe a CSM or doesn't like how things are being played out will give advisory advice or say, we're going to do it this way, right? And so then that account executive is battling because they have a manager telling them to do this and they have the other team to tell them to do this, and they're stuck in the middle. And I had that experience while I was working for a company, and it's an impossible place to be. How do you appease both? And that comes down to roles and responsibilities and everybody being on board. And when you have people in the chain of command that are not in sync with the current company objective, it makes it really difficult. And so, again, my encouragement to myself was always, what can I do to make the situation better? How can I ease your workload? How can I help you achieve that KPI so that if we're dealing with, people who are stepping outside of that objective, I'm still making sure that the customer is put first at all times. And that means, maybe I have to bend over backward to make sure that the AE is included in every single email, whatever that might be. And that's another area that I think that we could also challenge CSMs to be, or team members to be inclusive, is communication. So as a best practice, when there are organizational messages that must be communicated to all customers, we've all been there. When I send an email to a customer, I CC every team member who touches that customer for a couple reasons. One, I want the customer to know and to see that we're all on the same page. Everybody's aware of the messaging that's being put out. Two, I'm indicating to all of those internal team members that you are important. I want you to be aware of what's being communicated to the customer so that if they bring it up in their next conversation with you, if you wonder what's been communicated, did we send out this message to the customer? You have no question. It's right there in front of you. And I think those two things combined also indicate we are here to work as one, not just on islands.
Okay. Well, excellent.
Yeah.
So the other thing, like I mentioned just before you started recording, is kindness and how that is perceived in the modern workplace, and especially how does it relate to the role of CSM, because CSM spend so much time in front of customers and also internally. So I sometimes we just focus on the customer part of it, but in my opinion, CSMs probably spend equal time between people outside and inside the organization.
Yeah.
And so how does kindness kind of affect everything that CSMs do? And how do you see it?
Yeah. Well, like I said before we started the call, I think we are currently living in an environment, most of us, where there's tension across lines. We all have personal individual beliefs, whether it's spiritual or political. We say that those should stay at the door when you come to work. They don't, right? We're human. We bring them with us. And so now more than ever, kindness is difficult because the messaging is, if you don't agree with me, then that means you hate me. And that's just not the case. I think we need to be better stewards of understanding that we're all entitled to believe what we want to believe, but when we're at work and we're professionals, we're also representing our company, right? We need our brands to have higher value because of how we treat people. And so the way that I approach that is very simple. It's just, I'm going to lead with the foot of kindness at all times, because the moment I cross over into a reaction from an email, or I'm on a call with a customer and I've had customers scream and swear, and I've had to okay, how am I going to respond? Right? Because if I respond in kind, it just escalates, and it shows that I'm not capable of maintaining those emotions and stay professional. And I think we're all human. We make mistakes. I've definitely lost my cool before. I've had to apologize. I've had a lot of growth lessons across my career. But the more I think about, and you kind of said it, kindness versus empathy. Kindness is my own willingness to put aside my offense, to put aside the things that are bothering me, to put aside the feelings that this is a personal attack, and look at it from an objective employee standpoint. My role as a CSM is to represent my brand, my company, to the best of my ability to both internal stakeholders and my external customers, right? That's always the definition, I think, of what my role as a CSM is to be. I'm two sides of the same coin. I represent the company, I represent the customer. So to represent the customer, or to represent the company to the customer in a kindness motion, means that I don't take things personally. When a customer goes through bankruptcy, they're not happy with the product and they're going to churn. They want a discount because they don't want to pay as much. All of those conversations have trigger talk tracks that can raise emotions. And when you allow that to drive the conversation, you've lost. So I think if we as CSMs are expected to drive those conversations, we have to be able to maintain our cool and stay kind in how we respond, even if it's to say, I've come to the decision that this conversation is no longer productive. And I think we should wrap and take a step back, take a breather, and come back to the conversation when we can calm down a little bit. And that's always been really great for me. Um, Kindness internally, facing inwards towards our company. Brand reputation is everything. Glassdoor has shown us that people are voicing concerns in a real way about what their experiences and their work culture is. And I think, again, customer success is driving the heart of a company, which should be customer focused. So I need to be the example of what my company represents. And that speaks a ton to internal team members coming in as new members, people who've been with a company for a decade or more, that are burned out or frustrated and whatever. My job is to be as kind as I can, because that sets the example for how the rest of the company should function internally and customer facing. And it's not easy, but I think it's really critical if we want to be change agents within our space. And I think of any department within an organization that can be a change agent in the environment of tension and hostility and offenses that are happening, it should be customer success. And so if we can own that and drive it internally by just being every single day, I think to myself, okay, if I'm going to have a difficult conversation, what kindness can I lead off on? What foot can I lead off on that will start with a kind spirit around that conversation to help keep everybody calm and collected and professional?
No, that's thanks for that. Actually, there's some deep thoughts and some heartfelt emotions that you expressed,
Yeah.
and I think it's probably uh, anyone who wants to get into CSM role should probably hear that it's not all honey and roses and all of that. There are going to
Yeah.
be conversations where you might have to say some of those types of things that you just mentioned. Take a step back. Let's regroup. Refocus. Come
Yeah.
back, because I think anyone who aspires to be a CSM needs to be ready to lead with kindness and every day. So it's not like a optional Monday, Wednesday, Friday deal. It's pretty much on every single day, even when you are having a bad day, even
That's
when.
right. That's right. Yeah. And I'm very I'm a visual learner. And so I have sticky notes all around my extra monitor of quotes or sayings or things that I have to like pause and breathe through to remind myself. So one thing I will share, a statement that I look at every single day. It says to remember this: people can only love to their level of self-love. People can only communicate to their level of self-awareness, and people can only behave to their level of healed trauma. Every single one of us has gone through difficult, dark, painful moments. Every single one of us. And just because you don't see it on my face does not mean that I'm sensitive to certain things, does not mean that I've been offended by things, does not mean that I'm having a really bad day and I'm a little overly, right? Okay, we all go through that. But I think if we can level our expectations of each other and take each other as we are, accept bad days, forgive mistakes, being willing to have a conversation, be like, you know what, on that call the other day, you said something that I'm not quite sure that's the right thing, or kind of actually hurt my feelings. Can we talk through it and not take it as a personal attack, but give each other grace to have human emotions and be flawed, is a constant reminder I'm telling myself, because I've offended lots of people in the past. I'm very black and white. I'm very driven in business. I don't always put icing on conversations, and I've offended people, and I've had to learn from those in growth moments to go, okay, I need to readdress how I'm talking to people, how I present to people, how I come across to people, because my reputation is on the line too. And I don't want to have a reputation of being, rolling over people or not listening or being insensitive. I don't want those things to be said about me. So I come from a perspective where I've had to look internally to evaluate my own professional brand, what I represent. And at the end of the day, I want to be somebody that people go, man, that was a crazy meeting, but that was awesome because we ended on a great note. We respected one another. We're working great together. We have better communication across the board. but it starts with self-ownership and self-awareness, right? To be understanding of what are your trigger points, what are your moments of frustration, what are things that you just know are going to get your blood boiling, and how can you come into those circumstances preemptively prepared for, I'm going to stay calm, I'm going to stay kind, I'm going to stay professional, and I'm going to be open to critique, because we have to be if we want to be leaders and inspire others to be great. We have to be able to take critique.
So one last question before we wrap up, which is, in CSM and sales and account management, we talk a lot about personas. Do you take into account who you're talking to with some of those types of things that you just mentioned, right? I mean, so
Mm-hmm.
how does the world of personas clash with the, being kind, being, gentle, and being an adult, as you called it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think personas often dictate the level of conversation that you're having, right? Because I'm not going to have a granular conversation around struggles or product use issues or feature enhancement requests with a top tiered C level, right? Their focus is on the bigger picture. So, talk track wise, personas are going to change how that conversation goes. But I don't change my personal approach to the conversation no matter what the role is. So, my tone stays very much the same. My approach to that conversation is taking in what the customer is saying, taking in what a team member is saying, and then making sure that my response is always flavored with kindness, accountability, responsibility, grace, um, and showing a CEO grace, the CEO that was name calling and swearing and yelling, letting him get it out. I wrapped that conversation very quickly and said we should come back and have this conversation when we can all take a breath and readdress. He agreed. When he came back to that call, I was able to ask him, can you walk me through where do all those emotions come from? It's the 5 whys. Why are we at this place where you're behaving this way? Because if I can understand what pressures you're under or what triggered that conversation, then I can address it better. I can make sure that I'm only bringing value and that we're talking about what's important and I'm addressing your primary concerns. So persona wise, I think it's just how you approach it and how you hold people accountable to a point to understand what's driving the behavior and the decision. And sometimes you're not going to get that answer. At a C level, you may not get the backwards why of why are you so stressed out? Well, I'm a CEO, it's business, we're cutting people. Like, what else do you want me to say? Right. Versus talking to a sales leader, mid-level manager who's exasperated and getting to the nitty-gritty of your product doesn't do this. I can't get this to work. You guys are failing on support tickets. They're going to give you a much more in-depth perspective of how you can address those concerns and understand why the aggravation is coming out or the frustration is coming out of that individual.
Excellent. I love what you said. Really love what you said.
Thank you.
So as we close this out, thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time, Janelle. I think this was
Yeah.
a
My pleasure.
fascinating conversation, and
Yeah.
I think you made millions. I mean, no, if not millions, many, many, many great points. And I would, I would like to see, more people be aware. I mean, it's hard to do a lot of the things you mentioned just because it takes a
Mm-hmm.
lot of self-awareness and everything else, but at least be aware of some of these, emotions and roller coaster ride as you're walking through the day as
Yeah.
a CSM, and
Mm-hmm.
just be open to make other people's day better and letting others make your day better.
That's right.
So,
And that's
yeah.
all that's all at the end of the day we can do. And at the end of every day I ask myself, I go through each conversation, could I have said something? Could I have done more? And if the answer is no, then it's a great day. It was all I could do, And if the answer is, yeah, actually I could have done that, then I'm going to write a note and make sure that I address it for next time. So I take one day at a time. Honestly, it's every single day. I set myself up for success and I try to be better the next day.
On that note, take one day at a time.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Yes, thank